After 45, your heart sends warning signals that most men completely ignore. Not dramatic signals, not sudden chest pains that make you call emergency services. Silent, subtle signals that your body sends for months, sometimes years, before disaster strikes. And one of these signals precedes a heart attack by many years, which means that if you recognize it today, you have time to act. You have time to change the course of events. But if you continue to ignore it, like most men your age, you're letting a debt silently accumulate in your arteries, a debt that your heart will eventually present to you all at once without warning. Well, today, I'm going to talk to you about something men don't like to discuss: heart health, the vulnerability of the heart. Not because it's a pleasant topic, not because it's reassuring, but because in France, Belgium, Quebec, and throughout the French-speaking world, cardiovascular diseases remain the leading cause of death. Cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death in men over 45. 1 in 2 men will die from cardiovascular disease. And the majority of these deaths could have been prevented, or at least delayed, by 10, 15, or 20 years if the warning signs had been recognized early and healthy habits adopted before it was too late. Stay until the end of this video because I'm going to give you 5 little-known warning signs that your body may be sending you right now. I'm going to explain the exact biology of what happens in your arteries after age 45. I'm going to show you the dietary mistakes that silently accelerate the risk, and I'm going to give you a protocol for concrete, that natural cardiovascular protection. Not vague talk about good habits, but specific measurable actions you can start this week. And at the end, I'm going to reveal what you really need to watch for in your lipid profile, because what your doctor looks at is probably not what matters most. Let's start with a statistic that should stop you in your tracks. In France, every year, around 80,000 people suffer a myocardial infarction. Of these, 1 or more will die before reaching the hospital. And among those who survive, a significant proportion had received no prior medical warning. Or rather, they had received warnings that neither they nor their doctors had correctly interpreted. This isn't bad luck, it isn't fate, it's biological ignorance, and ignorance can be corrected. Here's what you need to understand about the biology of your heart and arteries after age 45. Your arteries don't change overnight. The process that leads to a heart attack or stroke is slow, gradual, and it often starts well before the age of 45. It begins with what is called endothelial dysfunction, a breakdown of the inner lining of your arteries, the endothelium. This lining is an extraordinarily thin and sophisticated layer of cells that regulates vascular tone, prevents clotting, modulates local inflammation, and controls the passage of substances between the blood and tissues. When they function properly, your arteries are flexible, elastic, permeable to beneficial nutrients, and impermeable to harmful substances. When they malfunction due to chronic inflammation, sugar, tobacco, oxidative stress, and a sedentary lifestyle, they begin to stiffen, become porous to harmful substances, and lose their ability to regulate vascular tone. It is at this stage that the first atherosclerotic plaques begin to form. LDL cholesterol, especially the small, dense, oxidized particles, infiltrates the damaged arterial wall. The immune system sends macrophages to clear them. These macrophages become engorged with oxidized cholesterol and become what it calls for foam cells. And gradually these cells accumulate, form a plaque, and the plaque grows for years, sometimes decades. This plaque grows without you even knowing it. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't create any obvious symptoms. It grows silently while you go about your normal life. And then at some point, this plaque ruptures. Blood comes into contact with its inflammatory contents. A clot forms in seconds. The artery becomes blocked, and that's a heart attack. This is what's called silent heart debt. Your heart accumulates a debt for years. A debt of oxidized cholesterol, inflammation, arterial stiffness, oxidative stress, and it presents it to you all at once without any apparent warning. But what almost no one tells you is that during all those years, the debt is accumulating, your body is sending signals. Subtle signals easily attributed to something else, but real signals if you know where to look. Here are 5 little-known warning signs, and I ask you to listen to them honestly, not to scare you, but to give you the information you need to act now rather than regret not having done so. The first, often overlooked warning sign is unexplained fatigue during exertion. Not fatigue after intense exercise, that's normal. I'm talking about disproportionate fatigue for moderate exertion. Climb 2 flights of stairs and suddenly find yourself out of breath when you weren't a few years ago. Walk briskly for 20 minutes and feel heaviness in your chest or arms. Do light physical activity and take an abnormally long time to recover. This type of fatigue during exertion can signal that your heart is working harder for the same workload. This could be because your arteries are less flexible, because blood flow is partially compromised, or because your heart is silently beginning to compensate for chronic vascular stress. Many men attribute it to deconditioning or age. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes it's your heart speaking. The second little-known warning sign is severe snoring and untreated sleep apnea. Here's the connection most people don't make. Obstructive sleep apnea syndrome, those nighttime breathing episodes that occur when the airways become blocked during sleep, is a major independent cardiovascular risk factor. Each apnea creates a spike in cortisol and adrenaline, causing a sudden and repeated rise in blood pressure. Every night with untreated apnea, your heart and arteries experience hundreds of these spikes. Over years, this leads to chronic hypertension, stiffens the arteries, increases vascular inflammation, and multiplies the risk of heart attack and stroke. If your partner tells you that you snore loudly and sometimes seem to stop breathing for a few seconds, take it seriously. Ask your doctor for a polysomnography, a sleep study. It's a simple test that can save you from cardiovascular disaster. The third, often overlooked warning sign is the onset of erectile dysfunction. I know this is a topic men don't readily discuss, but here's the biological reality you deserve to know. The penile arteries are among the smallest arteries in the body, and small arteries are the first to be affected by atherosclerosis. Erectile dysfunction is often the first visible sign of a systemic vascular problem. It can precede a major cardiovascular event by 3 to 5 years. This isn't simply a sexual problem, it's a vascular signal. If you start noticing a decline in the quality of your erections, a reduction in their spontaneous frequency, or difficulty maintaining them, and you're between 45 and 65 years old, talk to your doctor about it in the context of your overall cardiovascular health. This isn't a matter of embarrassment, it's a matter of life or death. The fourth, often overlooked warning sign is unexplained pain in the jaw, neck, left arm, or upper back. These atypical locations of pain are what are called referred cardiac pain. Because the nerves that innervate the heart share pathways with those that innervate in this region, the brain can interpret a cardiac distress signal as pain in these areas. This pain often occurs during exertion, such as climbing stairs, lifting heavy objects, or making sudden physical efforts, and disappears at rest. It is often intermittent, easily attributed to muscle tension or a neck problem. If you have pain in these areas that appears regularly during exertion and disappears at rest, see your doctor and request a stress electrocardiogram, ECG. Don't normalize this pain. The fifth, often overlooked warning sign is even a slight rise in blood pressure. Hypertension is nicknamed the silent killer for a reason. It doesn't hurt. In the vast majority of cases, it creates no noticeable symptoms. Yet every millimeter of mercury above 120/80 represents additional stress on your arteries and heart. The blood pressure of 135/85, which many doctors would still call high normal, already represents a significantly increased vascular load, elevated compared to normal. And between 135 and 150, the cardiovascular risk doubles. Measure your blood pressure regularly at home, not just during medical visits where the stress of the whiteout can skew the results. Resting blood pressure above 130/85, measured several times under relaxed conditions, warrants serious attention and concrete action. Now, let's talk about the dietary mistakes that silently accelerate this risk, because your plate is one of the most powerful interventions you have at your disposal, for better or for worse. The first dietary mistake is overconsumption of sugar and refined carbohydrates. We've already discussed this in other contexts on this channel, but in the cardiovascular context, the mechanism deserves to be explained precisely. Excess sugar glycates the proteins in your body. It binds to the collagen fibers in your arteries and makes them stiff. It oxidizes LDL cholesterol, transforming relatively harmless LDL particles into an inflammatory projectile that infiltrates the arterial wall. It increases triglycerides, which are an independent, often overlooked cardiovascular risk factor, and it increases vascular inflammation through several enzymatic mechanisms, eliminating or drastically reducing refined sugars and high glycemic index carbohydrates is probably the most impactful nutritional intervention you can make for your cardiovascular health. The second dietary mistake is excess pro-inflammatory omega-6 fatty acids. Industrial vegetable oils, sunflower oil, corn oil, soybean oil, grapeseed oil are ubiquitous in modern diets and processed foods. These oils are extremely rich in linoleic acid and omega-6 fatty acid that, when consumed in excess and out of balance with omega-3s, becomes pro-inflammatory. Chronic inflammation is the primary driver of atherosclerosis. Every time you cook with these oils, every time you consume processed foods that contain them, by consuming these oils, you are silently fueling this inflammatory process. Replace these oils with extra virgin olive oil for gentle cooking and seasoning, and butter or coconut oil for higher temperatures. The third dietary mistake is chronic magnesium deficiency. Magnesium is the most important mineral for cardiovascular health and is chronically lacking in the modern diet. It regulates heart rhythm, relaxes the smooth muscles of blood vessels, helping to maintain normal blood pressure, inhibits platelet aggregation, reducing the risk of clot formation, and protects heart cells from oxidative stress. Studies show that insufficient magnesium intake is associated with a significantly higher risk of hypertension, cardiac arrhythmia, thyroid, and heart attack. The best dietary sources of magnesium are dark leafy green vegetables, pumpkin seeds, almonds, Brazil nuts, dark chocolate over 85%, tofu, and legumes. If your diet is low in these nutrients, a daily supplement of 300 to 400 milligrams of magnesium bisglycinate is an intervention with an exceptional benefit-risk ratio for men's cardiovascular health. The fourth dietary mistake is a deficiency in long-chain omega-3 fatty acids. EPA and DHA are key anti-inflammatory molecules in the cardiovascular context. They reduce triglycerides, improve blood fluidity, reduce platelet aggregation, protect against arrhythmias, and decrease vascular inflammation. The vast majority of Western men over 45 are significantly deficient in EPA and DHA because they do not eat enough oily fish. Wild salmon, sardines, mackerel, arancini, and anchovy, 2 to 3 servings per week is the minimum target. If you don't meet this dietary target, a daily supplement of 2 to 3 grams of omega-3 EPA plus DHA is warranted. Now, here's the protocol for natural cardiovascular protection. And I want to be precise because vague advice is useless. Nothing. First concrete action, measure your blood pressure twice a day for several weeks with a reliable wrist or upper arm blood pressure monitor, once in the morning before getting out of bed and once in the evening before going to sleep. Record the results.
Calculate your average.
If your average systolic pressure, the first number, exceeds 130 millimeters of mercury, or your diastolic pressure, the second number, exceeds 85 millimeters of mercury, make an appointment with your doctor, bringing these measurements with you. Don't rely on a single measurement. It's the trend over several days that counts. Second concrete action, incorporate a brisk walk of at least 30 minutes 5 times a week. Not a leisurely stroll, but a brisk walk at a pace where you can talk, but where you'd be at the limit of your comfort level to sing. This moderate intensity is what produces the most documented cardiovascular benefits. It improves endothelial function, reduces blood pressure, improves insulin sensitivity, reduces systemic inflammation, and promotes the production of vascular nitric oxide. This isn't competitive cardio. This is preventative medicine accessible to any man over 45, regardless of his current physical condition. Third concrete action, reduce your consumption of processed salt and increase your potassium intake. Sodium-potassium imbalance is one of the most important factors in hypertension. The modern diet is high in poor quality sodium in prepared foods, deli meats, processed cheeses and sauces, and low in potassium. Reducing ultra-processed foods and increasing your intake of vegetables, legumes, bananas, avocados, and sweet potatoes, all rich in potassium, corrects this imbalance and significantly contributes to normalizing blood pressure. Fourth concrete action, actively manage your stress with everyday tools. Chronically elevated cortisol is a direct and independent cardiovascular risk factor. It increases blood pressure, accelerates atherosclerosis, causes arrhythmias, and increases the risk of plaque rupture. 10 minutes of deep diaphragmatic breathing per day. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 2 seconds, exhale for 6 seconds. This activates the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system, measurably reducing cortisol and heart rate. It's symptom-free, and its regularity is the only factor that determines its effectiveness. Fifth concrete action, sleep 2 to 3 hours per night and treat any suspected sleep apnea. I'm not repeating this point out of habit. I'm repeating it because chronic sleep deprivation and untreated sleep apnea are two of the most underestimated and easily correctable cardiovascular risk factors in men over 45. A man who sleeps properly and treats his sleep apnea can significantly reduce his cardiovascular risk without any medication. Now, what you really need to monitor in your lipid profile is what your doctor looks at: total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, which is helpful but insufficient and sometimes misleading. Here's what you should ask for at your next appointment. First, the triglyceride ratio, HDL. This is the most predictive indicator of your insulin resistance and your true cardiovascular risk. A ratio below 1 is excellent. Between 1 and 2 is acceptable. Above 2, you likely have significant insulin resistance, which generates small, dense, oxidized LDL particles that are most dangerous for your arteries. Above 3, it's a serious metabolic warning sign. Second, high sensitivity CRP or HSCRP. This is the marker of chronic vascular inflammation. Your standard panel may include a normal CRP, which only detects significant inflammation.
High sensitivity CRP detects low-grade inflammation, the silent vascular fire that gradually eats away at your arteries.
A level below 0.5 milligrams per liter is excellent for a man over 45. Between 1 and 3, your cardiovascular risk is moderately elevated. Above 3, the vascular inflammation is significant and warrants targeted interventions. Thirdly, homomystine. This acid, amino acid, when it rises above 10 to 12 micromoles per liter, is directly toxic to the vascular endothelium. It accelerates atherosclerosis, increases arterial stiffness, and multiplies the risk of cardiovascular events. Elevated homostine is often correctable with simple vitamins B6, B9, and B12, making it one of the easiest risk factors to treat once identified. Fourth, lipoprotein A, or LPA, is a genetically determined lipid particle whose elevated levels constitute a powerful treatment-independent cardiovascular risk factor. It is almost never measured in standard screenings. It is not easily treated with medication, but being aware of it allows you to be particularly vigilant about other modifiable risk factors and make informed decisions with your doctor. This is what your heart wants you to know after age 45. This is not resignation. This is not catastrophism. It is responsibility. The same responsibility you exercise in your professional life, in your role as father, and everything you do, take it seriously. Your heart deserves the same rigor. It has been working for you tirelessly since the day you were born. It sends you signals. Learn to listen to them. If this video has given you concrete information you didn't have before watching it, subscribe to this channel. Every week, I publish content on male vitality after 45, without gratuitous alarmism, without a commercial agenda, just what the science says and what you deserve to know to make the best decisions for your health. Share this video with the men in your life, your brother, your best friend, your coworker, because this information can literally save a life. And leave me a comment with your answer to this question. Do you regularly measure your blood pressure at home? I'm curious to know how many of you already do. Take care of yourself. Your heart is counting on you.